just a brief introduction. I'm Stewart Dickson and I'm a member of the Northern Ireland Assembly, and I represent the constituency of East Antrim, which is effectively the County Antrim coast, running from just short of Belfast all the way up to very near the Giant's Causeway. And I watch the Liverpool boat sailing down the loch most evenings. That's geographically where we are. I'm a member of the Alliance Party, which, as you know, is a Liberal party here in Northern Ireland, and we have 7 members in the Northern Ireland Assembly, and our party leader, Naomi Long, is the Minister of Justice here, and I have to say, doing an excellent job. I feel a little like the meat and the sandwich tonight, because Tony really ably set out the situation in relation to Brexit and the protocol, and I'll talk a little about the politics of where we're at in relation to the change of leadership in the Democratic Unionist Party. And I'm also fascinated by Martin and the book, and I've read a little about his book and what it's all about. Particularly, my interest in that is because I actually represent the Northern Ireland Assembly in the Council of Europe, which of course is indeed what his book and the history is all about. And I'm actually first vice president of the monitoring committee of the Council of Europe, and my role is to observe elections right across the 47 member states of the Council of Europe, and I'm also a thematic spokesperson for elections right across the Congress of the Council of Europe as well. And I've done very interesting visits all the way from Russia, who are member states, to Spain, Italy, lots of the Balkan states, so that's what I do when I'm not doing the day job. Okay, Tony set out the situation with regards to the protocol and the difficulties that it brought about. I guess we need to understand that the Democratic Unionist Party and the members of Parliament at the time essentially held Theresa May hostage, because they assisted the Conservative government to have their majority, and through that they negotiated a very large sum of money for Northern Ireland. But in addition to that, they sold their souls to the whole concept of Brexit. And not just a sort of soft Brexit, which perhaps middle Tories might have been interested in, but to the hardest of hard Brexits. They sold out to Aaron Banks and to Farage, and they helped drive that through the Tory party. But of course, Boris came back to bite them in the end, because he couldn't care less. He just needed their votes to get to where he was. He wanted to be Prime Minister, and he needed their votes to get into the situation that he got into. He famously entertained them, I think, at a Tory party conference. Some DUP members, he held a Northern Ireland reception and tore up a piece of paper in front of them all to cheer, saying, "There'll be no pieces of paper for you to have to sign to get your goods across the Irish Sea." And of course, as Tony has explained, nothing could be further from the truth. The DUP were completely and utterly blindsided by Boris. They were lied to by Boris, and they deserve everything that he did to them, because we were all sitting at home going, "Well, we told you so. The man is a liar and a charlatan, and you need to understand that he will not do anything that you think you want him to do, nor will he defend you in any shape or form." That, of course, then has led to a great deal of anger inside the DUP, and anger which, of course, has spilled over into the community, because they've sold the false narrative that the protocol has got nothing to do with them, and it's some evil conspiracy concocted by us and the Alliance Party and Sinn Féin and the SDLP, the Ulster Unionists. They just flip-flop around everything, so you can't really take into account what they think about the situation. And it's now evil Boris as well. But the reality is, of course, they were the people who bought the wraparound for the newspaper in England prior to the Brexit vote. They were the people who pushed for the hardest of Brexits. They were the people who backed the Brexiteers. And the protocol was the consequence of all of that. So the DUP cannot detach themselves from that. It's very easy when you start to disrupt people's thought processes in relation to what's happening, to spill over into violence in Northern Ireland. And we've seen that all too often here. The reality, of course, is actually very different. If reading the papers, particularly around the turn of the year when the protocol came into being, and when Brexit came into being for real, the reality was it was English supermarkets that had less on the shelves than the supermarkets here, because of course they forgot that Northern Ireland still remains in the EU, because we don't have a border between us and the Republic of Ireland. So all those Marks and Spencer sandwiches and all those salads and all those things that perhaps were missing on the supermarket shelves in England were just being driven across the border from the Republic of Ireland to here, because many of them are actually manufactured there, and that's how they found their way onto the shelves in England. Or, and this is the other thing, you will note that there are less boats travelling between Dublin and Liverpool, or less boats travelling across the Irish Sea from the Republic of Ireland, because they're now diverting directly to the European mainland. It takes a little longer. And what we used to traditionally call the land bridge, which was either crossing from the port of Larne to Scotland and all the way down through Scotland and England and across the continent, or going from Dublin across to England and through Dover, just doesn't happen any longer. Those lorries are just simply taking the longer route, but actually a better route directly between the Republic of Ireland and France and Spain. So that's what's happening. And the reality is that, while yes, there's been some disruption, there's actually been very much less missing on our supermarket shelves than there have been on perhaps English, Scottish and Welsh supermarket shelves. Tony's also right. There are problems around things like animal imports and exports and all of that. And I was very pleased to hear him say that there's a lot of despite the Boris bluster and the invoking of various articles and things like that, that they are now sitting down around the table working out the practicalities of this. The reality is that and he hit the nail on the head. We absolutely have to have that agreement with the EU to continue in relation to food moving between the United Kingdom and the EU. And there's no reason for that not to happen, because we follow the same standards. And the moment we move away from those standards, of course, things will be very different. And that's what happens, as he said, between Switzerland and Norway as well. And we effectively need the phytosanitary agreements that they have between Switzerland and the EU, between the UK and the EU. That's going to be a difficult one for the UK to swallow, and it's going to have to be carefully marketed and sold, because the arch Brexiteers really just do not want to release or relinquish any control back to Europe at all. That's the reality of who they are. It's sad and it's silly, but that is the reality of who they are. Will an American deal ever happen? Well, I'll certainly not be eating their chlorinated chicken, and I think there will be a public outcry when we start to see chlorinated chicken if it ever hits the supermarket shelves in the UK. But back to the DUP. Having created the monster that Brexit is, having created the protocol, there's a very strong belief among even more fundamental DUP members that Arlene Foster is somehow to blame for all of this, that she went too soft on Boris, that she agreed too readily, or that she lost control over all of this. And so there's been a lot of disquiet about her leadership through the whole of Brexit. But there are also sort of local personality issues. She is quite an aloof character. She doesn't really connect well with the members of her party. And so for some time, she has been, there's been discontent inside the DUP about her. And that really came about in the last week, when there was effectively a motion of no confidence in her. The party is a very unusual political party. It is a bit like Sinn Féin. It's more of a cult than a democratic political party, despite democratic being in its name. The DUP has an electoral college for its to appoint a leader, and that college consists of their members of the Assembly and their Westminster MPs. It doesn't include their councillors, and so it's a college, I think, of about 41 people will be deciding who the leader is. It actually only has somewhere in the region of 1,000 odd members as a political party. It is very small and very tightly controlled by the political elite inside the party. So, and they seem to be very, very divided inside the party. There are the bulk of the MLAs. The majority of MLAs will be those who will determine who the new leader is. And the two candidates are Edwin Poots, who is the current Agriculture Minister, and Sir Geoffrey Donaldson, who is their leader at Westminster. He wouldn't be that well known to the Assembly members, A, because of course he spends most of his time at Westminster, and B, because of COVID, really there've been no face-to-face meetings of the party, and he wouldn't have the day-to-day face relationship with the MLAs who form the bulk of the electorate, which of course Edwin Poots does. To them he's a very personable individual, and I read one of the papers saying that he can be regularly seen in the corridors of Stormont talking to his party colleagues, and he would be seen in the cafeterias and the canteens with them, and that's absolutely true. Everybody would say that. Certainly in terms of his ability to connect with his party electorate, which are the members of the Assembly, he would be very close to them, and I don't believe that Geoffrey Donaldson would be. But he is a very he's a very fundamental DUP character. He is, I suppose, in common parlance, he's a flat earther. He believes the earth was created some 4,000 years BC. He doesn't believe in dinosaurs. I mean, this is true. I mean, this is who this man is. Geoffrey Donaldson, I think, would be more pragmatic. He would be more on the Arlene side of the party, but having got rid of Arlene, why would you want Arlene Mark II? And I think that's the problem that the party is faced with. The people who are supporting Poots are very much in his camp. They would be seen as going right back to the roots of the party, the Paisleys and the Free Presbyterian element, the very fundamentalist elements within that party. The reality is, and I actually asked Poots the question in the House yesterday, because it was agricultural question time, and I had a question to him, and I asked him, well, if you become the leader of the DUP or become First Minister, well, interestingly, he has said he doesn't want to be First Minister. He wants to lead the party, but appoint one of his MLAs as First Minister. Interestingly, that's the same situation for Geoffrey Donaldson. He wants to be leader of the party and also wants to appoint somebody else as the First Minister. It's rather strange now. It's difficult for Geoffrey Donaldson because he can't be First Minister because you have to be an MLA to be First Minister. And there's no mechanism. Well, there would have to be an MLA vacancy. That's easy. They just get rid of somebody and they can hand the seat over because we don't have by-elections. But of course, if he resigns his parliamentary seat, which he has to do, there's every chance that our party could actually win the seat. If he resigns, because Lagan Valley is going to be a toss-up between him and the Alliance Party at the next general election. So neither of them want to be First Minister, but they want to lead their party. But I asked Poots yesterday in the House, what will happen? What's his plan and what's his timescale to get rid of the protocol? Because that's the question you have to ask them. If you want rid of it, they keep winding people up, and they of course will wind people up to the point of spilling over into street violence, and you will see graffiti on walls saying no Irish Sea border, RIP Good Friday Agreement. You will see no DUP, which is fascinating. This is the first time in the history of sort of modern Northern Ireland, that there's been anti-DUP graffiti in DUP constituencies because they are seen by loyalists and others as being responsible for this hated protocol. I don't know what there is to hate about it, other than it should never have happened in the first place. But the hated protocol has been brought about by Boris and his friends, aided and abetted by the DUP. So I asked Poots what his solution was to the protocol, how he was going to get rid of it. And he came up with the strangest of answers. He said, as minister, I have asked my department to seek legal advice from a top UK constitutional lawyer, and we intend to take an action against the government over the protocol. Well, anybody that there have been a number of leading lawyers have commented on the protocol. It's an international agreement. The UK government are not going to give it up. They're not going to renegotiate it because they would lose face on the world stage if they did, because it forms part of the Brexit deal, the withdrawal from the EU. There doesn't seem to be any serious legal grounds for the protocol to be overturned. And I think it will fall flat on its face. Arlene Foster attempted to do a crowdfunding amongst unionists to crowdfund a legal case against the protocol, but that fell short because she didn't get enough money gathered up to pay a barrister to take the case. We're talking of hundreds of thousands of pounds to run a case like that. And what I can assure you is that I will, if I that the Assembly will not let Minister Poots spend public money getting a legal opinion, or worse still, attempting to take a case to the UK courts in respect of that either. We simply will not allow public money to be wasted in that way. And I've already lodged questions with the Minister today, simply asking him how much he has spent already. But he's a very difficult character. You remember Tony said that, of course, all of these checks had to be set up for the Irish Sea border, and my constituency includes the Port of Larne. And that's where a lot of the food lorries and animal transfers take place between the UK and Northern Ireland. And despite the fact that the money isn't coming out of the Northern Ireland purse, and that Westminster is paying directly for all of the costs for the infrastructure for the Irish Sea border, he, as Agriculture Minister, instructed that the building work at the Port of Larne stop. And that's very problematic, because the vets and the others that are involved in doing the checks, and they're not that onerous, the checks at this point in time, are being done out of literally tents in the port, and there's no infrastructure because Minister Poots actually stopped the building of the infrastructure. And again, he did that at a cost, because builders and contractors had been were underway to deliver that. Michael Gove gave the money for it all to happen. So that's where we are in relation to the DUP and the new leader. They will be holding the election on the 14th, which I think is Friday week, and watch this space to see who becomes the new leader. Will it be Sir Jeffrey Donaldson, who is Arlene Mark II, because he's perceived to be slightly softer and a little more thoughtful in the way in which he would operate, but no less strident a member of the DUP? Or will we have the sort of the bull at the gate, if you'll pardon the pun, Agriculture Minister Edwin Poots, who will appeal much more to the hard line within the DUP? I'm happy to take any questions. I think see Mary's disappeared altogether. I must have done something wrong there. So yeah, happy to take any questions, and we can have a look at the chat and see what's in there. Yeah, I like that last comment. The DUP were duped. Yes, of course they were. They were completely duped by Boris. They were taken in by Boris. No doubt about that at all. The DUP were led up the garden path by him. They were used by him effectively to ditch Theresa May, to force that election, and ultimately to force the leadership election within the Conservative Party, and they got nothing out of it, or very, very little out of the consequence of that. They are outnumbered at Westminster, and to the extent that change of subject, you will be aware that as part of the reinstatement of the Assembly, or prior to the reinstatement of the Assembly, two major pieces of social legislation passed through Westminster. One was the introduction of equal marriage, and the other was changes to the abortion legislation in Northern Ireland. The equal marriage legislation effectively went through unchallenged across the piece, and it has not only been well accepted, but is well embedded in Northern Ireland, and really got little or no reaction from the DUP. However, the abortion legislation has been much more controversial, but such is the strength of the UK government that even though the abortion legislation changed here in Northern Ireland at the time, it has been difficult for elements of the legislation to be implemented. The Health Trust, the Health Minister has effectively, or the Executive has effectively held back the funding for delivery of services. Such is the strength of the UK government, and such is the disregard of Boris for anything that the DUP might want nowadays. As you may realise, a couple of weeks ago, the Secretary of State has taken the power himself to deal with any further funding of abortion services here in Northern Ireland.
I'm sorry, I'm going to have to cut you short.
You're
we
okay.
are running over. So we will have you back, and you may continue.